Now in this tutorial, we'll explore how to add realistic wind effects to your foliage in Unreal Engine. This system works seamlessly in both Unreal Engine 4 and Unreal Engine 5 and is fully compatible with any foliage system. You can set up and you can download the project for free and link in the description below if you need to get it and follow along on your own. We'll start with the built-in simple wind feature and take it further by creating a system with dynamic world-aligned wind gusts for a more natural and immersive effect. If you're interested in how the foliage was made, check out the earlier tutorials in this series. That said, with that said, you can easily follow this video without prior knowledge, so let's dive in. So building up on the work that we did before, we're going to build our wind for this particular mesh and this plant, but it will also work for any other meshes as well. So we're going to use this particular material that we've done before just to run this through. Just did a bit of cleanup in here, but again, nothing substantial has changed. It's all pretty much running in the same way. Now, we're not using any material functions here. We're just using this particular setup very basically in order for us to get the effect that we want. So what we're going to be effectively working with is the world position offset in order to get our wind going. So the first thing we want to do is we want to bring in a simple grass wind, right? And this is the foundation for this, and it's a very cheap effect for us to use. Now, one thing that you can do is always you can right click and promote to parameter these particular things in here, like the wind intensity, wind weight as well, and then the wind speed, and then the final one where it says additional WPO, stuff like that. That's what we can actually override that by just using a basic red color. So we're going to put that in there, and this is effectively, if we plug this in over into like the world position offset and apply, we should now be able to see wind if we start adjusting it in the material instance in here. So we can have a wind intensity of 1 with a wind speed of 1 as well, and a wind weight of 1, right? And this is the most weird thing possible. Now, obviously, you can decrease its speed, so it's like only moving a little bit, and you can also decrease its intensity, maybe to 0.2 or something like that. And then you have the wind weight, which is just making it sway a lot more or a lot less, depending on your requirements, okay? So the problem that we have straight off the bat is the fact that the whole plant is moving all the way from the bottom. So we've got to make sure that we change that, because we really only want it to move maybe towards the top. Now, also another thing in here to bear in mind is that we're using the same material instance for the whole plant. What I mean by this is that our plant has a few slots in here that we can use. The first slot being the actual stem, the second one being one type of leaf, the third one being the flowers, and the fourth one being another type of leaves, right? That means that we could have multiple material instances with multiple controls for each of them. So that's why we're not yet using multiple material instances, because we just want to make sure that we have the first one running accordingly as we would like. So going back into the plant in here, we have to mask this simple wind in order for us to be able to get the effect that we want, and to be able to, without any vertex color information or anything like that, to be able to tell it not to move from the bottom like it is right now. So for us to do that, we are going to bring in a world position node, right? And we're also going to be bringing the object local bounds. And we're going to add a divide node, and we're going to put these two together, right? So we're going to divide the world position by the max of the object local bounds. We are then going to put an add node and also a power node over in here. And also we're going to add a component mask, because we're going to only be affecting the Z-axis, which is the B channel. Right now, we're going to put this into the add node and this into the power node, and we're going to connect this all into the mask. And over here, we're going to promote to parameter, and we're going to call this gradient offset. So we're creating a gradient based on the world position, right? And then we're also going to promote this to parameter, and we're going to call this gradient power. Now, the default values here, I'm going to put this to a minus 0. I'm going to put this to a minus 0.5, and we're going to put this to a minus 0.1 just for the default values, okay? Now, we are going to then add a lerp. So the lerp is going to say wherever it's the B value as 0 in here, right? This is going to be no wind. And in the A value is where the wind is going to go. And this is going to decide, based on an alpha, where the wind is affecting the mesh. So I'm going to put that in the world position offset, and we're going to press apply. And now we should already see some results. Now, first of all, we're not seeing anything happening, so we just the wind that is stopped. So we have to go in here and look at the gradient offset and power, because all of this is going to be different depending on the mesh. So you're now noticing that it's allowing the mesh to move to a certain point, and this offset is going to like change from where, right? So we want to decrease that to ensure that it's not really happening from the bottom. The bottom is quite static, right? So right now it's still moving. This was minus 0.01 before, like that, and it was fine. But what if it's a -1? You can see that as we go further away like this, it's still moving. It's still not great, okay? Now, some of the things that we can change in here. Well, first of all, we want to transform the world position, because right now, depending on where the mesh is sitting, the wind will change. So we can actually see the effect of this mask by just plugging it into the base color in here, like that. So if we press apply, we should now be able to see just where the mask is sort of like, how the mask is sort of working. So if we start changing these settings, you can see, right, what it's affecting and what it isn't. So right now, you can see that the more it goes down, this is, you see, right now it's looking at this, if it's inverse, whatever is showing up as white, it shouldn't really move anything, and whatever is showing up as black, that's where it's moving. So in order for us to fix this problem, we are going to go over here, and we're going to add a 1 minus node, and we're going to plug everything in there like that. Now press apply, which is going to invert the whole thing. So now you can see that it's only moving at the top and not moving at the bottom. We do have our this power here is just too much. It's a bit too much. You can see it's just a bit too intense. And we are going to probably start it to around there, right? Something like that. And you can see that the plant is moving from here, which is fine. It's working as intended, right? Now, another thing here to look at is the fact that this is using just the world position offset. So we do need to transform the position from the world position to a local space. So we're going to put this from absolute world space to local space. And we're going to plug this in there in the divide node and press apply. And this is going to ensure that our mesh is now calculated based on its local space, which means that now we can start playing around with some of these settings, maybe something like that. And let me just, yeah, there you go. And this is how much of the plant is being affected. And for some reason, I got an error. Great. Thank you, Unreal Engine, for the crash. Don't you just love it? Anyway, we'll restart very quickly. I also wanted to mention that all my projects, including the World Forge project featuring my foliage system, are available on Patreon. On top of that, there's a variety of other exciting projects like space scenes, black holes, planets, and so much more. These projects are all accessible to my Patreon subscribers, so if you're interested in diving deeper into my work and supporting the channel, I'd love for you to take a look. You can find the link in the description below. Thank you for your support, and let's keep creating together. Okay, we're back where we were. Fortunately, I was able to save. Well, everything was saved, so that was great. And now this is kind of where I wanted it to be. It's not exactly, it's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. There's still issues with it in the sense of there's still quite a lot of things that could be done differently. So for example, right now it's moving just as it used to, but if we increase this number, we're effectively telling it no. I want you to start further up, and this is kind of what the effect will sort of like look like. You know what I mean? We're just getting it so it moves all the way at the top, but doesn't really move anywhere else, right? Now, you do have intensity, so how much you want this to kind of like bend. So obviously that's going to be quite weird, right? So I wouldn't set that up to be very high. You can also do the height. So again, how much is that sort of like bends when it sort of does its effect, or how fast, right? So that's great. And if you want, you can actually add some more stuff to this, like for example, doing gusts and things like that. But let's just first put our base color back into our material, so we get our proper coloring again in here. And this is, we're back to normal now. We can see our mesh as it was previously. And it's now swaying around, which is really neat and really cool. The final upgrade here will be to add a wind gust system. So in order for us to do that, we need to tell the simple grass wind that we want some more effects added on top of it. So the first thing we want to do, we're going to take the absolute world position and copy paste it over here. And then we're going to add a divide node, and we're going to add a multiply node and an append node. So effectively, append vector node, that is. Effectively, what we're trying to do is now we're trying to pan a texture that will dictate where the wind gusts are going to be coming from based on the world position. Okay, so we do that by adding a panner node in here, and the panner node will connect to a texture sample. And this texture sample will have a simple noise. Just search for noise in your Unreal Engine. And you can see it's even called game wind noise. Isn't that cool? Right, we're going to put this panel into the UVs, okay? And this is going to be our output, right? And over in here where we have the append, we want to make sure that we're dictating the X and Y values of the speed of this. So this is going to be, a scalar parameter. We're going to call it Gust. This is going to be the U speed, and then I'm going to copy and paste this, just to have a duplication, and this is going to be V, Gust V. That's for UV, right? That's for the coordinates, and then we're going to add a time node as well. The time node generally just goes into the time slot of the panner. Okay. Now this multiply node in here, we will need this in order to sort of like dictate where the UV scale is and by how much we're multiplying it. So effectively, we're going to call this Gust UV scale, and we're going to set this to a value of 5. This is going to go into the A value, and then over in here, we are just going to add a flat number of about 1,000, right? And this is going to go into the B value there like that. Now we're going to connect this into the divide, and the XYZ, this is going to be in the divide as well. Now we do need to mask the RG, the red and green channels, so we're going to add a mask in here, and we're going to leave it as RG. We're going to connect over like this, and this goes into the coordinate. Okay, now once that's done, we obviously need to connect the whole thing into one, let's call it a super cluster or whatever you want to call it, right? We do now want to add another multiply node in here, and we're going to connect the RGB in that slot. We are going to add another scalar parameter, and we're going to call this Gust intensity. Then this is going to connect into the multiply node in here. Once we do that, we do want to clamp this value, or saturate it. So you can use saturate from 0 to 1. You can do it that way, or if you don't want to clamp it, you can just simply add it into a multiply node, or like basically what you're trying to do here is, if we're just going to add a lerp, if we're going to connect this into the A value. So if the alpha here, right, the alpha of this has to be the same thing what we use for the wind, which is down here, right? This one. So we're going to have to put this into the alpha like that, right? In order to tell the gust not to show up higher than what it's meant to, right? It's the same thing. Hoping this is not terribly confusing. So let me just try and divide them a little bit, right? So the gust is down here. The wind is down here. This is the mask that's going to tell the wind and the gust where to show up, right? Now, these two, we will have to add them together. So we're just going to put them together, and this is going to go over into here like that. We're going to press apply and see what happens. Okay, now so far, we're not really seeing anything. And one of the reasons for that is because, first of all, we need to have more plants, and we also need to add some intensity here. Because if we actually change, put the gust intensity to 1, we're going to put this to a minus 0.2, the gust U and V, something like that. Now we should be able to see the gust. I think you can kind of notice that they're moving, but we're not really seeing a lot. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start painting with some foliage. So I'm going to go into Shift-3 foliage mode, and I am going to drag our UE plant into the foliage type. Now one thing you need to make sure is that when you double click it, you do want to have your material instance added to it. So we're going to take this material instance. Again, we're using the same material instance in every slot. We're not upgrading this yet to, every slot being on its own, right? We're going to select this foliage, and we're going to have to paint these in. I'm probably going to have to increase the amount per square meter, maybe something like that, right? So just adding a few plants here and there. Hopefully this will actually, let's just try go for 1,000. So we're just adding a lot more of these. They're all kind of the same size, right? Okay, now we can go back into the material instance in here. And now we can have a look at increasing the gust strength. So maybe take it to like 100 or something like that. So now we're able to kind of see it affecting more. And when it comes to the scale of this, if we tone it down, maybe it's something like a 2. I'm just trying to kind of get to a position where you're able to see it. So let me just try to further push the details in here until we're able to see more. I think part of the reason why it's not effectively running is because of my saturate node in here. So I'm just going to pull that out. I'm going to press apply, and we can see in here now that it's working, but the settings are way off the mark. So minus 0.2, again minus 0.2. And then the gust intensity will go to a 1. And we should now be able to start seeing some gusts in here working. Let me just try and push this a bit further. You can see right there, it's sort of like affecting certain meshes. The more that if I decrease this UV here, basically it will make the texture be a lot bigger, the texture that's being used for this. And as you can see, the smaller it is, it's just affecting one little point over there, so that's not good. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to push this to maybe like a 10 or a 5 or something like that. Okay, and now we just these are the gusts right here. That's again just a bit too much. And let me just play around more with the UV. Something like that. So in the end, these are the sort of like settings that I've gone to have. So I've just looked at, increasing its intensity, maybe something like that. Okay. Value of the gust intensity could be like a 2 or 3 or something like that. Maybe even more. And then UV scale around 2 or 1. But the higher you go, the less is affecting things. So this is actually quite nice, quite a cheap effect for us to be able to quickly achieve wins. Now you can see that the more you push, then this is where the mask is going to kind of play a role. So you're going to have to balance this out a little bit just to make sure that you're not breaking the system, that we created earlier. So maybe something like that will be quite nice. This is also a bit weird because all the plants are the same height. So I definitely would recommend that you delete some of them and have a look at doing various different heights. So maybe a 1 to 2 rather than, all of them same height, because it's just going to look odd. You can see in here now with extra plants added, this is what that looks like. And you can see just how in a controlled environment of lighting, this entire mesh, these meshes can look better by just simply, having different lighting conditions and so on. It's going to make a hell of a difference depending on the lighting conditions that you set up for the scene. But yeah, there you have it in terms of the in terms of the wind system itself. Thanks for watching. With this wind system, your foliage now moves naturally and dynamically in your Unreal Engine projects. Don't forget that you can download the project file for free from the description below, and if you haven't already, check out the earlier tutorials where we create the foliage from scratch. Next up, we'll explore character interaction with foliage and objects in the world. So stay tuned for that, and make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to keep up with the series. See you in the next one.